Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you avoid putting yourself into a box. My guest today is Olivia, and I really enjoyed this conversation, so I'm super excited to share it with you. Olivia is the founder of OneKind Creative, which is an award-winning design studio committed to bridging the gap between graphic design and social impact. So with that very quick introduction, let's dive right in and get started with this episode featuring Olivia.
So I'm Olivia and I'm the founder of OneKind Creative, which is a design studio specializing in design for charities and purpose-led organizations and essentially using design to make a difference in the world.
I love that. That is such a good tagline. Can you tell me about what got you interested in doing this work? And we can talk a little bit about maybe design first and then applying it to making change. But tell me about what got you interested in design.
I think I've always wanted to be a graphic designer before I even knew what it was. When I was younger, I was constantly making magazines and designing covers for magazines, which obviously now I know is graphic design. But 6-year-old me did not know that's a thing. And I've always just been fascinated, particularly with typography and how we can communicate ideas visually, but specifically through type. Luckily, my school actually did offer graphic design as a subject. So quite early on, probably around 15, I really thought, oh, this is an actual thing that you can do and get paid for. So pretty much I've always loved it. Sure, there's been times where I've thought I'm going to do something else, but I've always kind of come back to design. And I think as well, I've always been a very creative person, but I didn't quite fit into that fine art mold that they try and put you in at school. So during art lessons, I was like, I like this, but I'm not necessarily good at the things they're doing. I can't draw people to save my life. And it still fills me with dread every time I have to draw a person. Design, because you can come at it from so many angles, and the whole idea of communicating ideas visually is what I really, really loved. So yeah, the fact I get to do that every day is amazing.
I love that. I think that is such a beautiful background to all of this because I actually think I resonate a lot with what you were saying about fine art and the idea of art class. So much of it was drawing and also for me, painting. I'm no good with finger stuff. I feel like anything that uses my hands, I'm not good at. But I think that then made me feel like I wasn't creative, quote unquote. I wasn't,
Yes.
which then, of course, when I started to get more into some of the work that I'm doing now, I was like, this is also creativity and this is also expressing myself in a different way. But I think that it was kind of unlearning some of those definitions. Anyways, I could go on a tangent about that, I think. So we'll keep going. What made you interested in working with organizations and nonprofits and people doing good, I guess, with this work that you're doing? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. I think there's been a few different, there's honestly so many different bits that have come into it. During my A-levels, my final piece for my A-levels, we had to pick a particular topic. And I really focused on the idea of feminism and how graphic design comes into feminist protests and campaigns throughout history, specifically looking at sort of the posters and artwork at protests. So through that, I started to get a sense of design when it comes to change and social impact. But again, I didn't really know how you could do that in the real world. Sure, making a great poster at a protest is fine, but I need a job. So I wasn't quite sure. But then when I think I was 17, I went on a school volunteering trip to Uganda where we worked with an amazing organization around period poverty. And I basically just got on really well with the founder and said, I want to be a graphic designer. I'll do leaflets for you. I'll do it for free. And he gave me a chance. And to this day, I still work with them. And we've had such a long, amazing relationship. So I started to do leaflets. They do the shoebox appeal every Christmas. So I started to do work with them for that. And it kind of grew and grew and grew. Then I had the opportunity to design a menstrual health manual, do all the illustrations for this guide, which is then training teachers how to deliver these sessions themselves so that volunteers aren't necessarily needed. And it was kind of through that really kickstarted the idea of this is what I love because I'm designing, I'm being creative, I'm illustrating, but it's literally keeping girls in school. To see the power that has, I was like, whoa, I've got to do more of this. And looking around, there's kind of a big gap in the industry where a lot of really large organizations will use in-house designers. But then you've got the really, really small organizations that potentially can't quite afford graphic design. And then there's this middle ground where there's nothing there. So I was like, I want to try and do this and maybe fill that gap. And so far, it's going really well. And like I said, I get to use design to make a difference, which is just the most important thing for me.
It is going really well. And I will link your website and everything so people can go check out some of your work because it is awesome. And I think as soon as you go on your website, you just see this like pop of color and energy, which is very much you. And now talking with you, I can see it in person as much as we can be across screens, but I think it's wonderful. So everyone should definitely check out your website and some of the stuff that you've done. It's so cool. I guess this is going to be kind of a bigger question that you can take however you would like. But are there any specific issues that you feel really, really passionate about? I feel like you've touched on some of them. Another way of saying this is probably like if you could make any change in the world, what would that be? But I feel like that's huge. So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see facing young people in particular in the world today? Huge question.
Based on sort of my experience in projects I've worked on, it all kind of comes under like SDG 5. So like gender equality. My sort of area is particularly period poverty. I'm a trustee for a period poverty charity, and I've worked a lot both here and internationally on that. And I think it's something that people don't really realize. You hear of period poverty and we know it happens. But when I talk to people about period poverty, even here in the UK, people are just like, huh? There's period poverty here? Like, I don't see it. And I think it's now 1 in 5 people who menstruate in the UK can't afford period products. And so many young people are missing out on school every single month because of this. And it's just something that's not really spoken about. It's 2026, but it's still such a taboo. And it really frustrates me. And, you know, as soon as you miss out on school, you're missing out on opportunities that affects your future massively. So that's a huge one for me. I think gender equality in general, obviously that's an extremely broad topic. But that's something that I'm really, really passionate about and will speak about a lot. But also in terms of the work I do, climate change is huge. And again, I think people don't necessarily relate climate change to graphic design because it's like digital and we're not printing as much as we used to. So it's fine, right? But like your digital like carbon footprint is huge. That comes down to websites, social media, even certain like inks when you do print, the papers you use, the ink choices, it all comes into it. So I'm slowly, you know, integrating that more into my work and talking to clients about that and the choices they make. Because it really is huge, even though, like, so we're not printing hundreds of posters anymore. It's almost even worse now because you don't see it when it's digital. And I think people aren't necessarily aware of that. So yeah, that sort of answers your question. But honestly, like there's so much I could talk about.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't know that about the printing and the inks. And I think that is, thank you for bringing that up on the podcast because I think that's something that more people should definitely learn about. Can you tell me a little bit more about the period poverty campaigning that you've done and some of the work that you've done? Because I think that's really interesting. And I haven't had that many period poverty I think I've had maybe 2 in the past, which you might actually know them. Can you tell me about why you think people might not be talking about it as much?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I've worked on period poverty initiatives primarily in Uganda with the organisation that I went with when I was 17. I've been back quite a lot, both educating the classes, but also doing teacher training. And then set that a similar sort of program up myself in Cambodia. So having experience from 2 extremely different cultures where it is very taboo, I can see why it's taboo in these cultures. I'm working in really small communities. Obviously things are very different and you can see why it's taboo there. But then when you come to the UK, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be taboo anywhere. But particularly in the UK, when I speak to people about it, I think it is, I don't want to say it's ignorance because it's not, people just aren't aware. I've still not got to the bottom of why that is. I think large companies aren't talking about it enough. A lot of organisations like large companies in the UK that, you know, produce paid products, they do amazing work and they're giving products away for free and doing campaigns, but they're not shouting about that side of it enough. And I think because we're, you know, you might be used to seeing you go into toilets here and there are free pads. It's like, oh, that's being dealt with, that's sorted. So it's kind of, you just turn a blind eye to it. I also just think financially, it's so different here. I've had so many conversations with larger organisations where I'm sort of campaigning for period poverty. The amount of times someone has said to me was, oh, well, a pack of tampons, it's only £2. It's only £2. And yes, maybe £2 isn't a lot of money, but to some people, that £2, especially if you've got multiple people who menstruate in the household, that is the difference between eating or buying tampons that week. And I think it's easy to just say it's £1, it's £2. But that is a huge amount of money for some people every single month, like I said, especially if you've got multiple people. So I think that really comes down to it as well. But it is a growing problem. And I think particularly young people, they're more embarrassed to talk about it. there is still a lot of stigma and shame because of that whole idea, well, it's only £1. Why can't you afford £1? And I still think, schools are doing things and putting products in toilets, but a lot of the time students have to now ask for that. I've spoken to a lot of schools that had them in the toilets, but people were just taking them even if they didn't necessarily need them. So now you have to go up to like the student desk, which is normally like in the main thoroughfare of a school. You don't want to ask someone that. So yeah, there is just honestly still so much stigma and shame around it, which is awful and it's infuriating. But there are organisations doing things. They are there, but you just have to really search for them still, which is quite frustrating.
Thank you so much for talking about that. And I think in different contexts as well, I think that was really, really valuable. And my last question for you, lots of young people might want to make change, but they might not know how to get started with that work. What advice would you want to share with them?
I think don't box yourself in too much. Initially, I thought because I didn't even go to university, but I thought because I wasn't, in sort of law or politics, that then there wasn't space for me when it comes to rooms where there are policymakers and decision makers. So don't put yourself in a box and think, well, because I'm in the creative industry, because I'm in this industry, I can't make change. Because if you want to, you can. There's always a path in. And I'll always say it's not what you know, it's who you know, like networking, just having conversations. LinkedIn, whether you love it or hate it, you can literally message anyone and ask for an opportunity. They might ignore you, they might say no, but you can just message anyone. And I think as well with young people, even myself, I was hesitant to start talking on social media about what's important to me because I thought, well, I don't have 20 years experience, so who's going to take me seriously? If you're passionate about something and, you have knowledge around an area, you can be a thought leader in that space. You don't have to be 50 years old. So just start putting it out there. Sure, there'll be people that say, what are you talking about? And try and prove you wrong. But as long as you're confident and you're passionate, then yeah, just start talking about it because people will notice. And I think as soon as that happens, that gives you so many more opportunities. That's what I found. There isn't many sort of representatives from the creative industry in these rooms and discussions, but actually talking about that and linking it to the industry I'm in really helped. So yeah, just start putting yourself out there and start talking.
As you can hopefully tell, I absolutely loved talking with Olivia, and there were so many smiles and lots of laughs while we were recording. I think Olivia's last piece of advice is a really great one, especially for this fast-paced, quickly evolving world that we're living in right now, which can also be really scary. Don't put yourself into a box. If you're passionate about something, but it doesn't exactly fit into your job, do it on the side, or see if there's a way you can make it fit. If you have an idea for a project that you've been wanting to start, what's holding you back from starting it? There are endless opportunities to connect with other people, collaborate, and learn. And I will go ahead and take this opportunity for a shameless plug. If that idea you've been kicking around is a podcast or a blog, please send me an email. I would love to support you. My email is down in the description of the episode. There is no need to box yourself in. Olivia is a great example of combining multiple interests and making them her full-time, incredible career. So please keep Olivia's story in mind, and please remember that change comes when you avoid putting yourself in a box. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Olivia and OneKind Creative on Instagram and LinkedIn, so I've included those links in the description of this episode. I've also included the link to Olivia's website, so please check that out if you'd like to see some of Olivia's work. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at bethechangemedianetwork. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.